Hi, it's Kayla again, and I wanted to talk to you today about monthly planning. And this is primarily for those of us who menstruate and have a menstrual cycle. And the importance of this, at least for me when I was a young woman, was feeling like my menstrual cycle would get in the way of my monthly plans or maybe my classes, and it was really frustrating and confusing. It felt like my menstrual cycle would hit, or just before that when you experience some PMS, that might have coincided with stressful events and compounded to make a really stressful situation. And I want to teach you guys a little bit about how I have been able to work through this and how I plan my month now in order to help work with my cycle rather than against it. I'd really love if you would be willing to support my channel. You can do that by subscribing and clicking the bell, and then you'll get notified every time I put out a new video. So let's dive in. The first thing that we want to understand is what our menstrual cycle is. So there are 4 phases to our menstrual cycle, and that kind of corresponds with about 4 weeks. For some people who have a 28-day period or menstrual cycle, then that might be more aligned with that. But other people have a little bit longer of a menstrual cycle, and we'll talk about that in some future videos as well. But first, our menstrual cycle starts on day 1 of our bleeding, and that is our menstrual phase. That is a time where we have very low progesterone, very low estrogen, and a lot of other hormones that we as women use in order to be social, to be able to have energy, in order to think and have ideas and be creative. And so that time is really a time where our body is hormonally retreating inwards. It requires more nutrients at that time because we're losing blood. And so some of those things are going to mean that our body physically isn't going to be in the same place it is at other points in that month. The next phase is often called proliferative, and these 2 phases are part of the follicular phase. That means you're developing a follicle or an egg. And so this is going to be the time where we're developing that egg. In the proliferative phase, that's week 2, that is going to be much higher in estrogen. We have an estrogen spike. Estrogen can help with our performance athletically. It means that we probably will be able to run farther, go to the gym and work out and not be as fatigued afterwards, be able to do more repetitions of weight training or whatever types of exercise we're doing, whether that be dance, volleyball, basketball, anything that we are having athletic performance is going to be better in this time period, simply because we have more estrogen, we have more strength. Estrogen can also help to buffer our inflammation from muscle tears that happen when we're exercising. So all of that can contribute to faster recovery during this time as well. So it's really a good time if we're going to work up to a point of training. That might be where you do your long run. You lift a little bit more if you're doing any weight training, or see if that can be something that you work up to. I am a dancer, and I have danced for many, many years. And as part of that, if that was a time where I had practiced up to a certain point of being able to stretch farther or to be able to do a certain length of dance, that would be a great time in order to incorporate that. The 3rd phase is our ovulation. And this is the start of our luteal phase, so kind of like the moon setting in our menstrual cycle. So ovulation happens. It's usually within a 2 to 3 day period, maybe 1 day for some people, but that time period is going to be the peak of estrogen. We have progesterone starts to increase at this point, and progesterone is a calming and somewhat buffering of our personalities or our mental health. And so progesterone can help with having a balanced mood. That 3rd week is really a time where if you want to be creative and you want to create things, that 2nd week, having all of the ideas, pushing with our physical bodies. And then the third week, having that time where we act out those plans from that second week. If you're a creative person, you do art, you do projects, videos, things like that. Usually that third week, we've gotten back into a rhythm of being at a higher energy point. And so that can be a really good time to plan for those types of events. We have our highest energy, shortest recovery time physically. So it's a really good time to plan for bigger projects. If you have school projects, planning to do them during that week, because if they're maybe due during your menstrual phase, you might not have the energy or the physical mental capacity in order to get that done as good as you might want to be able to have it done. And then coming around, the fourth phase of our menstrual cycle is the secretory, and this is the end of our luteal phase. And what happens is our hormones dip off very sharply. Progesterone basically comes to a screeching halt, and that can be part of why some women experience PMS symptoms, PMDD. At this point, if they have other hormonal imbalances, progesterone can kind of cover them up. And this point is where we emotionally have less bandwidth. We physically are starting to have less bandwidth. We're going to have some high energy, but a much shorter recovery time right before we're going to go into our menstrual cycle. So having our exercise and our physical as well as any projects taper off at this time is a really great way in order to help keep that balanced. So for me, I plan my month out in accordance with this. In my second and third weeks, I have more meetings. I'm more social. I'm not going to be as worn out or tired from that. And so I'll plan more in those 2 weeks. And then the other weeks, I'll have more milder things. I'll have probably more space so that if I need to retreat in, write down ideas as they come to me, work on things that are more routine so I don't have to expend as much creative energy, physical energy, and taper off some of that exercise as well. So I have enough energy to recover and to not necessarily burn myself out by expecting myself as a woman who is very cyclic to keep going and keep pushing, which we often have in our American societies. We don't have a ebb and flow in business expectations, but having that in our daily life and planning around it, especially as someone who operates a business, who's a leader, those type of things are really important for female leaders to make sure that they are buffering in that time to give themselves a little bit of recovery so they can go out and do what they're called to do and have to do in order to keep their companies running, to keep their staff, in order, not necessarily in a bad way, but keep things running and be that positive leader. So making sure that we set personal boundaries around those times. And I know other people have said this as well. I have a position where I do have that flexibility of having the plans for my month be within my control almost completely. But some of those things we might want to consider outside of that as well. If someone's working 2 jobs, they're a single mother, having that buffer time and at least being able to plan for birthday parties or any other types of social events within that 2 weeks where we're going to have a lot more energy can benefit our kids. It can benefit our spouse and our family members as well, so that we have the emotional capacity in order to do those things. So if you like this video, I'd love for you to subscribe, share with me in the comments what you thought, and until next time, be well.